right? So if you were to look at that on the guitar here, you'd have like the Locrian would need to be included on that one. So you have boom, boom, and then you'd have to be including, the Locrian on that one. So that shape is going to be different than like the mixed Lydian, by the way. If you hold the mixed Lydian, notice that this note is different. And we want to be able to identify that with our chord constructions as easy as possible in the context of the song, which you have 7 chords. We'll talk about that later. All right, what if it was a 5-note chord? What would it normally be called? It would be called a C major 9. So a C major 9. Now, where does the 9 come from? Well, they basically said, we're going to take every other note, we're going to make a scale, we're going to take every other note, but there's only 7 notes in the musical alphabet, and then instead of going around the horn, going back to 2, they want to go up to 9, even though there isn't a 9 in scale degrees. Why? Because we assume that you take every note. So we're assuming that you're going to take the 1, 3, 5, 7, and then the 9. And if we made it a 2, I think they were worried that the 2 is a smaller number than the 7, so that wouldn't indicate that you should be taking the 1, 3, 5, 7, and then the 2. So they made it a 9. That's kind of confusing. That's adding another layer of complexity that's not really necessary. What would be easier? You don't need to call it a 9. You could just say, hey, look, just take an Ionian C4, meaning you're going to start on the Ionian node, which happens to be a C, and go up 4 modal half steps. And we're smart enough to know that we're going to go around the horn back to the 2. We're just going to go around in a circle, right? So if I look at this, it's going to go, okay. If you think about this, you're just going to say, all right, that's going to be, from a scale degree standpoint, it would be the 1, and then the 3, and then the 5, and then the 7, and then the 9. This 9 is equivalent to the 2, right? The 9 is equivalent to the 2. So it would be easier to just say, hey, look, we're just going down around, get out of here. We're just going around the circle, and we're going to take modal half steps to just build a chord that's going to be that many notes long, right? I got distracted by the thing. So let me show you. Let's go back on over here. I'm trying to use the cool tools, and it's kind of confusing me. But I'm trying to be cool with the tool. All right? So it would be easier, instead of naming the scale degree, just say, hey, look, no, just take every other note. Just take every other note, right? And then you could make it a capital, and that would make it the modal center. So from a scale degree, from a proper distance terminology, we would say, how do you build it? You start on the node you're on, then you go up 2 modal half steps, 1 modal whole step, another 2 modal half steps, another 2 modal half steps, another 2 modal half steps. That would give us the 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. From a scale degree, then we would make it the 1, and then go up 2 modal half steps, 2 modal half steps, 2 modal half steps, 2 modal half steps. So from a scale degree, you get the 1, 3, 5, 7. There's only 7 scale degrees. They went up to 9 instead of going back down to 2. We're going to keep this as 8, right? Because 8 simply means that you're going up like an octave, right? You're just going to go, but you're going around the circle pitch-wise, and so it should be fine. So in other words, if I looked at it this way, what are the nodes? We're starting on node 1, which would be Ionian, and then we'd have node 3 and node 5, node 7, and then node 2, right? Because we're going around to node 2. And we can see that because we just imagine this going around in a circle. So we have the nodes that we would hold down: Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, Locrian, Dorian. Now it's useful to see them in this order instead of putting the Dorian here, because technically the Dorian should be an octave up, right? It shouldn't be this Dorian if we're thinking about going around in a circle and distance-wise, linearly, like it's more of a spiral thing. This should be the Dorian that's an octave up. Now on the guitar, we grab whatever we can get, typically, right? So we kind of use the same name oftentimes, but we should technically have it in order, right? And showing distance as well as pitch. But let's go to, what if we make a 6-note chord? What would that be called? Well, it'd be called a C major 11. What does the 11 mean? Well, there's only 7 notes. Then they went up to the 9, and then they went up to the 11. So now the 9 is equivalent to the 2, the 11 is equivalent to the 4. But you're just skipping every other note. What would be easier? Just call it a C, an Ionian C5 chord, meaning it's a 6-note Ionian C chord. Why? Because I'm on the node we're on, and then we're just going to skip every other note 5 times. So what would that look like if it was at 11? Let's think about it from a scale degree standpoint. It would be Ionian, it would be the 1, and then the 3, and then the 5, and then the 7, 9, and then the 11. The 11 here, the Lydian, is equivalent to the 4. So see, but it would be easier just to say, hey, look, just skip every other note, and then you don't have to list it as the 11 or not. You just realize that you're just going to keep going around in a circle, skipping every other note on the continents, which are in a block format, meaning it's a circle, right, in general. All right, so that would be easy, a much cleaner convention. And so we're going to say, all right, well then, and then what are the nodes? We would say, okay, so now we have the Ionian. We've got the 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, right? And then we can say, okay, let me get this out of here. I think I have some kind of issue happening. Why are there 2 of these? Oh, I can't take it. So that goes to the scale degree of a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. All right. And then the modes that are going to be in, the modes will be Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, Locrian, Dorian, and Lydian. All right, let's do one more here. So we're going to say, all right, what if we add all of the notes in the key? What would we call that? A C major 13. Why? Because we're going to take all 1, 3, 5, 7, and then the 9 is equivalent to the 2, the 11 is equivalent to the 4, and the 13 is equivalent to the 6. So we assume we're basically grabbing the entire thing. Now, in practice, that doesn't happen on the guitar because it's impossible. We only have 5 strings and like 4 available fingers. But you can grab the 13, and then you'll have to drop some notes in between. Now, later on, if we use a cleaner system, we can list which notes we want to drop, possibly, right? It'd be a lot easier if we have the shortest system possible to start thinking, how can I add a little bit more detail to say, I want to grab that 13, but I want to drop the 5 or something like that, right? So it would be easier for us to do that if we have a clean, a shorter, simple system that's contextual to the song, and then we can introduce more complexity on top, which won't overwhelm us, hopefully. So we'll do that later. So if we have, this would be the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and then 13. The 13 is equivalent to the 6. See, all right? And so I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly because we're running long on time. I want to go through the other 2 modes here. So let's see if I can do this. All right. So then here's the steps. It would be 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Scale degrees would be all off by 1. The 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. 9, 11, and 13 being equivalent to the 2, the 4, the 6. And then the modes are the Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, Locrian, Dorian, Lydian, Aeolian. All right. So now let's go to the next one. So now we'll do one that's not the major key. The major key is a little bit more simple because it is what we use as the 1 with our numbering convention. But let's say we go to the Lydian. Why are we skipping the Dorian and the Phrygian? Because they are minor modes. Let's compare the modes that are most similar to the major key, which are the other major modes, which means they have a major third. We'll talk more about what a major third means in future presentations when we get to distance intervals. But from a general standpoint, it means if I'm going from this one to this one, this distance is actually 4 notes away. So we're skipping 1 modal whole step, but the C to the E is 1, 2, 3, 4 notes away.